Good afternoon, everyone. How's it going as you start coming on in? We're a little bit late here, but that's okay. Tim had another interview beforehand, and he has graciously accepted to come back for a second half of this interview. So we're going to keep this one to our more general conversation today, sort of like we did with our friend Angry Melvet. Um, and then we're going to come back for part two and get into the meat of some of these questions. But Tim, good afternoon, my friend. I'm Nick. For everyone who doesn't know me, if you as you're coming on in, I'm Nick Parrow, not your dad, here on Sick of This Shit Publications, bringing Tim Whitaker from Whitaker Speaks, someone that you have a lot of folks have seen or heard. He's been on my channel before. He has some amazing discussions with it's April Ajoy, correct?
Yep.
And you guys are fantastic, and the work you're doing is incredible, and we need more folks like you out there, and we need more folks doing the work that you're doing. So thank you. Before we
Thank
get
you.
into it, thank you
Thanks for
for
having
doing
me.
what you do. And can you introduce yourself so people actually know who you are and what you do
Sure. Yeah.
around here? Because you
Yeah. My,
do, like I said, you do great stuff, and I appreciate it a lot.
I really appreciate that. Yeah. My name is Tim Whitaker. I work under the name Tim Whitaker Speaks. I'm also the founder of an organization called the New Evangelicals, which helps Christians find a better path forward in faith away from Christian nationalism. And yeah, I mean, look, my TLDRs, I grew up in the white evangelical world. I was an all-in believer until Trump, and then I shifted my views, and now I help expose Christian nationalism and how that world operates, and in hopes of making the world a better place that promotes human flourishing for all.
I love that. Thank you for doing that work. It's so important. It's so vastly important right now because we're in the time of Christian nationalism
Yeah,
and um, deafeningly loud misogyny and patriarchy.
yeah,
And you grew up in that culture and
yeah.
you understand it from a very different perspective than I do. I've never lived in that culture. I didn't really have a heavily religious background growing up. And I'm at best agnostic because I just don't care. I'm going to do good no matter what, be it heaven, hell, or not. I don't really care. Um, and you are doing some of the work that I know I ask about for people to do. You were doing it way before I said anything, but you're doing the work from the inside as a Christian, as a man. You're doing two sets of work right now that need to be done.
Mm.
And this conversation is a lot about that, is what that work is, what it means to you, how you got to this place in all of this, and some of the examples that you've grown up with or experienced. Did you
Hold
lose
on
your?
1 second. My child just walked in. Give me 1 second. I'm
Oh,
so
you're
sorry.
totally fine.
Sorry about that. My little
No,
5-year-old unlocked the door and came in, so it happens.
it does. You'll a lot of times in my background you hear Uncle Nick, Uncle Nick, Uncle Nick, or my
Yeah,
kids running around. That's a normal thing here, and in fact, we encourage it because that's what being a parent is, right?
yes,
You
it
have your
is.
kids, you
Yes, it
have to
is.
parent them, you have to take time out real quick to answer a question. And we're trying to give men examples of that, like what it actually looks like to be a good parent, to be a good partner, a good person.
Yeah.
Because we're doing a better humaning series. There's some really bad humaning going on right now.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and unfortunately, the majority of it is stemming from, at least outwardly, from two of the most powerful Abrahamic faiths,
Mm.
at least in our culture. I
Hmm.
cannot talk specifically about culture in the Middle East because I don't live there. I can't
Right.
talk about culture elsewhere. But in the US, we have two predominant religious backings, the Christians and the Jewish faiths, as I say, an Abrahamic faith system that is moved towards fascism
Mm.
very heavily. And I'd love your thoughts just on a general note right now before we dig into any of our actual questions today. What are your thoughts on what it means to do something? What do you take as away from this time as what do you need to do as yourself to promote a different path than what is being taken?
Well, I think it depends on who you are and where you come from. I think we have to start with that. Like the person who grew up agnostic might have a different path to take than the person who grew up like me, an evangelical fundamentalist. It might be different than the person who grew up Jewish Zionist, for example, right? Because as we know, not all Jews are responsible for Zionism. Not all Christians are responsible for Christian nationalism, right? There are a lot of people inside of those faiths fighting tooth and nail to rid our sects of the more fundamentalist sides, right? So, I can speak as a former evangelical, but still very much Christian. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of deprogramming and then reprogramming, right? I had to deconstruct what I thought I knew about the world and about faith and the Bible and Jesus. And then I had to reconstruct some kind of paradigm that made sense, that also had a fruit that promoted the human flourishing of all my neighbors. And that's, of course, much easier said than done. It takes a lot of time, and it's not fun. It's painful. It's not comfortable. It's a very it's not a great process to go through, but on the other side of it really is a path that leads to liberation. So I think it just depends on who you are, and then you kind of go from there.
So, with that in mind, as who you are, what you said Trump was part of the trigger for you leaving, or was a catalyst for you leaving. What caused that in you? What did you when you started looking back on the actions that you have taken and what changed? What do you see as being the catalyst for that change? And were there other people involved in helping you make that like shift when you were deconstructing? Were you alone during that process, or did you have support there to help bridge the gaps? So looking back on it, how would you evaluate it?
Yeah, it's kind of complicated, but I think it's definitely safe to say that that Trump was when the dam kind of broke open. I was still in the church up until 2021, until they removed me. So I was still in the space, even though my views were changing very quickly. But yeah, I think Trump was the moment where I went, wait, I've had a lot of questions, I've had a lot of concerns. Now it's so blatantly obvious that my concerns can no longer go ignored. Again, when you
Yeah.
have someone, when you grow up in a world that teaches you about the importance of sexual purity and saving yourself until you're married and being a virgin, all that stuff, then those same people, those same Sunday school teachers are telling you, how dare you not vote for the guy on the cover of Playboy magazine and who's bragging about assaulting women? That really throws you for a loop, because you're like, I don't get it. I'm just doing what you taught me to do. Why am I now suddenly the bad guy, right? So I think that was really, and this is not uncommon, I think for many, many people who grew up like me, that was such a watershed moment of, is it about the integrity? Is it about the principles? Is it about the values I was taught? Or is there something else going on here?
I think that's I think that's really cool. So what was the thing that to you, what was the what's going on here? As you continue deconstructing it, what was the big trigger? We had a question in the chat of like, what was the bridge too far? And was it a bridge too far, or did you see more multiple bridges that just like came out of the fog at some point and you're like, whoa, before I cross that bridge?
Yeah, I mean, there were three cultural phenomena that shaped this, right? Trump is number one. That was the big one. That was the one where I
Yeah.
went, okay, this is too far. Now, again, I was still in church. Like, you don't just go, I don't like Trump, I'm leaving my faith community. It's not that
Yeah.
linear. These are people that
Yeah.
you're doing life with, that you're friends with, that you see every week. I was drumming in the church. So I had a life that I didn't want to leave behind, even if I had major concerns and was really perplexed by the rise of Trump in the circles I was in. But on top of that, you had the Black Lives Matter movement, right? For me, that was another huge wake up call that, okay, something is wrong with race and with race relations in America. Again, coming from a world where I was taught that MLK fixed racism in the 60s, this was kind of a watershed moment. Like, wait, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery was jarring. And then friends of mine were sending me videos trying to make Ahmaud the bad guy based on lies. And I'm like, wait, I thought that I was standing on a tradition of truth, but you're not telling me the truth at all. You're actually lying to me. So then, of course, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, etc. That was a huge watershed moment. And then the last one, of course, is COVID. I call it the unholy trinity of movements. But COVID, again, watching people I knew wearing a mask is tyranny. This is a pandemic. Vaccines maybe aren't trustworthy. I was like, whoa, as a Christian, I don't get this. None of this was political for me at the time. This was not about changing political teams. It was about the theology of loving my neighbor as myself. Why wouldn't I wear a mask during a global pandemic? Why would I not do that as a Christian, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't think it's tyranny. I think that we're just trying to be safe because we don't have a way to combat a global freaking pandemic, right? So those are the three big movements in my life that really shifted me.
That's okay. So with that, when let's talk about maybe the pandemic a little bit and how that shaped you, because that was a really isolating moment for a lot of people. Um, and I think that can also be attributed to like the acceleration towards where we are was that pandemic put
Yeah.
us into an acceleratory state. Is while you were in the pandemic, aside from the mask thing, like that, because that's a big, like, that was such an easy thing for people to do was wear a mask. It also revealed a lot underneath for people when they refused to wear that mask. What what did that do for you, say in your friends group and in your community? How did that impact your relationship as you were starting to your relationships with your old friends group? How did that change? How did things change for you in those
Well,
points?
I do live in New Jersey, so even the conservatives aren't that far gone yet, right? So honestly, in my social groups, it wasn't that controversial. This is more about like the cultural conversation, what I was seeing online. I mean, even pastors who disagreed with it still wore a mask, or they still followed most social distancing orders. Even my church did that. It was more about watching the cultural conversation on social media, watching big pastors that shape the minds of other people, saying that this is a pandemic, right? Watching that kind of stuff, then watching friends I know like that video, going, wait. Why would you? Help me understand this. So at the time, it wasn't like it was an immediate things are strained. My inner circle was pretty much on the same page I was. Like, this is dumb. Let's wear a mask and social distance. It was more about the broad social conversation in evangelicalism that really concerned me, especially watching a worship leader named Sean Foyt start doing maskless worship gatherings around the nation in the name of faith over fear. As a drummer in the church myself, as a worship drummer, I was like, this guy doesn't speak for me at all. Like, what is going on? How is this being tolerated in this space? That's really what got me, pretty riled up, frankly.
Okay, so the national discussion, really that discourse of
Yep.
extremism becoming more accepted as normality.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, you can argue either it became more extreme or finally, like, the coat was off or the mask was off, so to speak, right? Like, okay, like what people have been thinking is not really coming to light. Hard to know which one, probably a mix of both. But yeah, those three things, those three social movements were very concerning to me.
yeah. And so nowadays we're seeing the impacts of those social movements become policy. And can you talk about what you see from like a Christian nationalist perspective as someone who's seen what it's like on the inside and who many what the faith beliefs of many of the people who are pushing things like Doug Wilson and Pete Hegseth and their view of Christianity is how do you see that as becoming an integral part of the government, like a theonomy style or a theocratic style rule? Do you see that as an end goal specifically, or do you see that in conflict, say, with some of the others who are leading us in that direction, the techno fascists, things like that?
No, I think it all kind of for them. It all kind of syncs up. I mean, there's going to be some squabbles. The Christian the Catholic nationalists, the charismatic Christian nationalists, the Pete Hegseth, Doug Wilson, more reformed Christian nationalists. They're going to have their fights, but politically, they're pretty much aligned. Look, Pete Hegseth has Crusader iconography tattooed on him, and he's running the Department of Defense. I'm not sure
Yeah.
how much more obvious we need of an example of the Christian nationalists have taken over our government. That's not including the quieter ones like Russell Vaught, for example, the architect behind Project 2025, or even Stephen Miller, even though he's Jewish, certainly enhances and is leading the Christian nationalist project. Paula White, one of the biggest names in the New Apostolic Reformation, right? Directly has the ear of Trump directly, able to shape how he thinks about things. So, no, Christian nationalists are absolutely embedded in our running our government. There's no doubt about that.
So with that, with the war in Ukraine, coming from a masculinity perspective and a view on like this idea of there is no wrong, almost like the view that I see from a lot of these folks in it. And it's not a Christian nationalist or a Christian specific thing. It's a fascist specific thing, is this idea of they can never be wrong. And it's also this very patriarchal idea of like the men can never be wrong specifically, which is why I think we got into Iran and we're not leaving is because we can never be wrong. Do you see that as playing as like a policy choice on this too? Because the big question is, where do you see the war going? Really
In
is that big
Ukraine
question. No, in
or in
Iran.
Iran? Okay, sorry.
In Iran,
Yeah, Mr.
because that to me, there's been a lot of signaling towards this is an Armageddon, this is a holy war, this is the American crusade. Do you see that as the reality? Is that is what they're going to try and push for another endless 20-year war as a crusade?
I think that there is an angle to it in the inner circle of those conversations about Crusader, language. I don't know if that's like the main public push. Honestly, no one knows. No one knows why we did this. I mean, Netanyahu was in our situation room, I guess, giving Trump some kind of intel. And unlike the rest of our presidents who avoided invading Iran, Trump, the doofus, is like, sounds good. Let's go ahead and do it for no goddamn reason. And here we are, right? I mean, literally, we have gotten nothing in return. There was no reason to invade Iran. We listened to Israel, and that's I want to be clear. That's not to say that there's a cabal of Jews, running the world. I'm just saying we listened to Netanyahu, and here we are, right? So I think that even Trump can't give us one single reason why we did this, which leaves a vacuum for people to give 1,000 different answers. I think one of them certainly can be, as a Christian nation, we have to go, destroy the savage Muslims, frankly. I mean, that's how they think about Muslims around the world. And they will use that kind of justification to hopefully get their base on board. The problem is that this war is incredibly unpopular, even among Republicans, which is why the MAGA base is splintering and fracturing so much right now over it.
Yes. And so let's talk a little bit about that on the fracturing part for just a moment, because there's the nationalist part of MAGA, the very nationalist part of MAGA is also ultra isolationist. Is that something that you saw within the church, these movements toward isolationism, or was there a different like masculine leaning influence or presence in all of this? Like, what did the church present that you saw in terms of like this movement towards these types of things?
I mean, the church fell in line after 9/11 when we invaded Iraq. There wasn't really a big movement in my church circles, at least, to become an isolationist. They were, hey, we have to, we're on the, it's good versus evil, right? It's God versus the devil. So I think that with the rise of the far right, the Nick Fuentes types, there has been a huge isolationist movement that hates war of all kinds, which is why I think even Fuentes is going against Trump now. Carlson, Tucker Carlson's doing the same thing. But in the spaces I grew up in, certainly we didn't want to get into all kinds of wars, but they certainly defended and supported, the war in Iraq.
Okay, perfect. So we're moving quick on interviews questions for the actual masculinity part, just so that, because I don't want to get partway through that conversation and lose it, because it's really awesome. I'm just looking at a chat in
is
the
he still
YouTube side.
Is he still here, this person?
Yes, they just put another chat.
Yeah, I see him. I'll respond to this directly. I don't know who Alex Andrew Ryzen 3486 is, but obviously you're a complete moron. I mean, I just gotta be honest about it. You think America that is killing kids, that is kidnapping children, kidnapping 5-year-olds, that's executing people in the streets, you think that somehow we don't have a problem? The problem in the world, especially in America, is not radical Islam, whatever you think that is. It's radical Christian nationalism that is taking healthcare away from millions of people. I think this is such an important part, and frankly, I'm a little unfiltered, so whatever. But the fact that we live in the world's wealthiest country and that we have veterans who can't get affordable access to healthcare, children can't get access to healthcare, most Americans can't get affordable access to healthcare, what does that tell you about America being a shithole? Like, for real. I think that we have not woken up to the reality that we have it not that great in this country. The oligarchy have it great. The billionaire class has it great. The rest of us are drowning in debt of all kind, trying to survive. And by the way, our own government is killing our own people with absolutely no accountability, led by a madman who is bombing children in schools. Do you think, Mr. Alex and Ryzen 3486, that if Iran bombed children in our schools, do you think that you'd be pretty upset about that? But all of a sudden, when we're doing to other kids over there, what, they deserve it? Oh, they're shithole countries? Miss me with that bullshit. Honestly, like it's such stupidity when you examine the claims of these people. It's absolutely nonsensical.
Also, we'll add to that
By all
is
means.
the reason most of these countries are considered shithole
Right.
countries is because we spent 20 fucking years there
Seriously.
bombing and blowing it up. And then before that, other nations spent years and years and years there bombing and blowing them up and not allowing them to progress to what we would have considered civilized. We
Exactly.
did this. It's
We
our
did that.
fault. We did this. We never let these nations evolve past what
Yeah.
we thought was acceptable. We called them the global south.
Yes.
We literally bucket them away from everybody and
Yep.
say they are lesser than for no other reason than we decided they were lesser.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, get away from the shithole country thing. We're a shithole country most often. Like we're taking our healthcare away. People are dying in our country. My state closed down all like their entire child health food network because we don't have the funding anymore for it.
It's
I
insane,
don't
dude.
hear about that happening in the Middle East. Maybe they don't even have those yet, but that's our fault because we made those countries so fucking shitty
We can
that it's
argue
our fault.
easily that the U.S. is responsible for the current state of Iran, given that we've been part of the regime change over and over again. You know, again,
Yeah.
like there's just no accountability of the project of the American empire that exports 42% of all the weapons around the world. Like we are the freaking problem. We are
Yeah.
the agent of chaos. You know. So anyway, we can move on, but I just had to address that. Like, give me a
No, I
break.
think that's super important. Being able to address these things and for masculinity and when we're talking about men is we have to be willing to push back openly, honestly, and
Yes,
without fear
100%.
during these times. Like we cannot just sit there and be quiet and say, no, we're not responsible for any of this. Masculinity is about taking ownership, actually better humaning, which this whole conversation is going to be about when we get to part two, when we come back, because we have to have a shorter interview today, which is totally fine because this has been a great conversation anyway. Is the definition in my mind of intelligent masculinity, and I'll leave Tim with this so that as a beginning pointer for it is masculinity in general is the idea that we cannot offboard accountability onto others. And
Yeah.
we have to be willing to live with the consequences of our actions and values. And that's it. You have to take accountability for your actions, and they're not other people's problems if you made them. Don't make you
100%.
problems, other people problems.
Yeah.
And we made us problems into everybody else's problem. We
Yep.
export fascism. American corporate fascism is what we export
All
to
over the
world.
place.
Palantir is a company of fascism,
Yes.
and we export it. And they believe in this idea of toxic empathy.
Yep.
And Tim, I'd love your thoughts on what is toxic empathy in your mind, and why do you think it's stupid?
Well, it depends. I mean, Ali Stuckey, who kind of coined the term, will tell you that it's anything that embraces a lie, which is so hilarious considering how she embraces Trump all the time. But yeah, the idea of toxic empathy is just another term coined by the right to essentially make the world a crueler place. There's just no way around that, you know. And by the way, I mean, I agree on the surface. Empathy can be toxic. The judge who pardoned the swimmer who raped a woman, or gave him a very light sentence because he felt bad for his career, had toxic empathy towards that man that let the victim, suffer and the victimizer, essentially get off the hook. So, yes, certainly, I guess
believe
we can
that's the
talk about.
Turner case.
Yes. So sure, we can talk about toxic empathy, but the way it's used today is essentially to say that if you think that queer people deserve to live, if you think that women deserve abortion access, if you think that we should stop bombing other countries, if you think that, you know, maybe Trump isn't a great guy, oh my God, toxic empathy, how dare you allow these things, you know? And so it's just been weaponized as another tool by the right to make the world more and more cruel.
And that's the point, because cruelty
Yes.
is the point. And I've come to this, and it's such a simple statement, but it means a lot. Is we, especially for men, is a lot of men were taught growing up is three emotions: happy, mad, sad.
Yep.
Were our three primary emotions. Nowadays, we're really taught mad, sad.
Yeah.
Because happy led to joy and questioning what was going on, and questioning, are we actually doing things right? Like,
Yeah.
are we good? Are we learning? Are we trying? And so the idea to me, and correct me if you're wrong on this, if I'm wrong on this, if you think, is that toxic empathy is taking away happy, so that the only two languages we have to emote for our emotions, especially as men, is mad and sad. And those are really explosive and damaging more often than not, when you can't talk about what is actually going on underneath.
Yeah. No, it's good. I like that. You know, I like how you phrase that. I think that's a great point. You know, there's also this, and we'll get into this on, I think, on the next episode, 'cause we're almost out of time. But you know, there's this idea too that, you know, anything that a man being quote unquote soft, showing affection, showing love, crying, hugging someone, hugging his kids, hugging his wife, showing remorse, right? Those are all weakness, and it's quote unquote gay, right? That's the term, as if being gay is wrong anyway. Like, what are you talking about? But there's this whole world of like, you know, alpha males, you know, have a nice car and they have a six pack. But honestly, you know what's funny about that? It's all for the male gaze. It's all
Mhm.
things that other men want. That's what this
Yeah.
is. It's actually quite gay itself in that way, you know.
Yeah,
So
there's a
yeah,
lot of like built-in erotica for men
yes,
in our
yes,
own culture.
yes,
But that's also because so many of them are repressed. Like,
exactly.
they
Oh,
want to come out.
exactly. Exactly. Or they just want to be normal. Look,
Yeah.
obviously people embody different levels of feminine and masculine traits as human beings. And sure, we can talk about in stereotypical senses, men embrace more masculine, women embrace more feminine. Sure, there's always crossover. I mean, I
Mhm.
hug my kids and I kiss them and I cry with them because I'm a good fucking dad. That's what dads do. And I also will roughhouse with them, right? My wife will roughhouse sometime. And other times she's a little more, you know, sympathetic. Other times she's a little more sad or emotional, and vice versa. We all kind of rotate, right? So I just think this whole idea of a true man doesn't show emotion actually is just so weak, because it's not easy to show emotion as a man in this society, right? It takes courage
Mhm.
to be vulnerable on camera or in front of someone. So it's just kind of funny how they invert what they think is super tough alpha masculinity, when in reality they're all a bunch of sheep who are following Myron Gaines or Andrew Tate or Donald Trump to the T. You know, it's so weird.
And yeah, and before we close out today, I think the weirdest part about all of that too is, like you said, is none of it is actually geared toward the female audience. None of
Right.
what they do is geared towards the female audience, which is hilarious in its own right, because they think they are going to attract women,
Yes.
but most of them aren't married, and if they are married, they're not happily married.
Exactly.
And where the rest of us are sitting here going, huh, I can treat a woman like a person, and I get a much better response out of it.
Yes.
And they don't do
Yes.
that. It's
Look,
so it's so simple and so weird. I
we
understand it philosophically, but I don't understand it like morally, how they
yeah.
could how someone chooses that path.
Uh,
Um,
we can get into this on the next live, but I'll
yeah.
just say I'll leave this here. My wife and I have been married for almost 10 years in July. We have the best freaking marriage ever. And guess what? I'm not an alpha bro. I'm not walking around ruling my roost with an iron fist. Like, ew, that's so gross. Like, oh, it turns out I'm actually empathetic, and she's a good listener, and so am I. And we take our, you know, like we've learned how to have healthy conflict resolution skills that find the common ground between both of us to promote the flourishing of our marriage, right? So it's
Yeah.
just so funny to watch these alpha bros who usually have terrible marriages. They're often divorced. Their wife isn't happy. And here I am, and I'm assuming you are, just doing our thing, not really giving a shit about being alpha. And I have a
Mhm.
freaking great marriage. It's the best, you know? So
Yeah.
it's just so
Last week I
funny.
celebrated my 11th anniversary. So
Congrats for you. That's
thanks.
fantastic.
Thanks,
Fantastic.
man. Yeah, like I don't look like an alpha, but I've been happily fucking married for 11 years.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
maybe I'm doing it right.
So
I want
who's
to
the
show the,
alpha? Who's the
yeah, I want
alpha?
to show this chat that we got on our YouTube side, because I think this one's really good before we close out, and I'll give you your QR code, and I'll let you go so that you can promote yourself. Is just leading on this. Thank you for this wonderful comment, Queen Home Slice. Is women want someone who treats them well. To 99% of women, looks are secondary. We simp over freaking Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings. So be for real. Can't stand these alpha bros. I wanted to put that comment up partially too because of mostly because of the Samwise Gamgee reference. Like, that is one of the things we love in our house. Is both my wife and I think Samwise is hot. Like, we all know that's the male body image or the male aspect that so many women actually like, because he's caring and he's kind and he's gentle,
empathetic,
and he wants to help, and he's a good friend.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So leave with that. Samwise, be a Samwise and not an Andrew Tate.
I'm in. Right,
Tim, let me see if I can get over to it. There it goes. It's going to move here in a second.
Oh, wow. Okay. Whoa, look at you. Fancy.
Promote yourself, my friend, and the work that you're doing.
You can find me at Tim Whitaker Speaks on Substack, YouTube, and Instagram. Most of my stuff is exposing Christian nationalism and things like that, but cultural takes, things like that. Happy to answer any questions in my DMs, and everything I offer is completely free. There's no paywall even on Substack, but any support always helps.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it so much. I kept you a couple extra minutes.
You're good.
Go take a break. Go take a break for your next show. You're going to be busy. Everyone, please go subscribe to Tim and the work that he's doing. We're going to have him back soon to finish out the interview and have our full-on discussion. So thanks, everyone, for being with us here on Substack, on YouTube, on Twitch. We appreciate all of you. We'll see you all again soon. And as I always say, we're done being sick of this shit. Now we're doing this shit. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, Tim.